Hi everyone, it's Franny, and today is the oil change on our 1995 Porsche 993. Tools and supplies we'll need a big Phillips screwdriver, and that's to get the plate off the bottom of the car. Next to that is a 7mm nut driver, which we'll use to remove some of the heating components under the car to give us a little more access. Our torque wrench, and then next to that our ratchet. Three different sockets. We'll need a 10mm, a 13, and a 15mm. Above that, of course, are rubber gloves. Below the sockets are a couple of gaskets we'll need for the oil drain plugs, and the little rubber gasket goes on the plug that goes into the actual oil tank. To the left of that is a long black tube. Now that's a replacement part on my car. I think it's missing, so I'm going to see if this is the right one. I'll see if I can fit that or not. To the left of that is a little cut from a plastic jug that I use just to keep the oil from going nuts when I take the oil plug out of the bottom of the engine. Below that is the oil filter wrench, and that makes taking these oil filters off super duper easy. Of course, to the left there we got our two oil filters. Now on a 993 there are two oil filters. The big tall one goes in the oil tank itself, and the littler one actually goes on the engine. Below that is our silicone grease we'll use to lube the rubber gaskets on the oil filters. Above all that are our roll towels and rags. And to the left of that is the oil. Now we'll need probably close to 10.5 quarts of oil total. Behind that are our oil catch pans. I'll run you through the steps for today. So the 993 is a little bit more complicated than other 911s, but really not that bad. So our first step is always going to be to go and take the car out, get it good and warm, bring it back, put it up on the lift, and we're going to remove our right rear wheel. That will give us access to the wheel well cover in there. We'll have to pull that back a little bit. The oil tank lives forward of that. So at the base of the oil tank is the drain plug, so we're going to go ahead and drain the oil out of the tank, and then there's a big large oil filter up there as well. So we'll pull that out, and then while that's all draining and all that, we're going to get underneath the car and go ahead and drain the oil under the engine as well. Well, that's draining. We've got a few bits we're going to have to take off to get to this smaller oil filter that's actually on the engine. So we'll pull that out and go ahead and refit the new one. We'll replace all of our drain plugs and the big huge oil filter on the tank. And then we can reassemble the wheel and all that fuss over on the right side. Then all that's left is just to put oil in the car. So it's about 10.5 quarts or so. We're going to get the car warm again, and then the car has to be level and it has to be warm in order for us to check the oil, and we do it while it's running. So it's kind of a neat process to do that, and that's it. We'll start by knocking our wheel bolts loose. Now normally I'll go ahead and put the tire underneath the car as an added measure of safety, but I need to actually get to a bit of this plastic stuff down here, so the tire is just going to be in the way. And we do have a jack stand back here on the car holding it up on the jack tray that goes across the lift, so we're good. So our first step is going to be to get this wheel liner up and out of the way. So there's a little 10mm plastic nut here that we'll take off. There's some Phillips underneath here that I need to take off as well. The earlier cars are a little bit different than the later cars in that the later cars have a hatch underneath here that you can open, and you can get to the oil drain that way without having to take all this bit off. I'm going to have to take a bit of this bottom cover off. Two more Phillips screws here and here that also have to be removed. And then we have some more plastic nuts here. One of the first things we always want to do before we drain the oil is to pull our oil cap. And then inside we always like to check the gasket in here just to make sure it's in really good shape and that it's sealing well, because this is under vacuum here. All right, with our bottom panel off here, our little rocker panel, that was a total of 8 Phillips screws and 6 of the little plastic 10mm plastic nuts. So it was a bit of a fuss to get it off, but what it does is gets this very exposed. So this is the drain plug on the tank, and it's gonna make it super easy. We just need to put our oil container under it here. So it's a 15mm, so we'll use our 15mm socket on it. There we go, just break that loose. All right, now this is not just a dead plug that's only this big. It's actually fairly long and has a rubber washer at the end, so you'll feel a little resistance as you're pulling it out. So this is where the plastic deflector guide that I built out of just a little stupid plastic jug works really well, because if I take this out, it's just gonna splatter right in my face. So I can put this in here like this and loosen this guy up. Here it comes. Now this is the oil tank, so it's going to drain out really fast. And since we pulled the oil cap, the oil filler cap off, there's plenty of air in the system, so it's going to drain out really fast. Our next task is going to be to get the oil filter off. Now you can reach up here and try and do it by hand. If you can't get it off, you're going to use the little Hazet oil wrench. But let's see if we can get it off by hand. This is just going to be a little bit of a mess. There's nothing you can do about it. There we go. Okay, there's our oil filter off. Now normally I would let this drain for a while, but as you can see there's very little oil coming out of it anyways, and I really want to get this button back up so I can get the car back up, put the wheel back on, and get the car back on all fours. That'll just make me feel a lot better. So the first thing we'll do is go ahead and put our new oil filter back in. I always like to use a little bit of silicone grease on the rubber here to make it a lot easier to get off. And we always install these just hand tight. All right, that's in there good. So for our drain plug, there's a little rubber washer right here that we're going to take off and replace. All right, and then just work your rubber washer off. Just fit the new one right where the old one was. Awesome, great. You don't have to worry about really doing much for this washer because it's going to go right up into the oil thing, so it'll be fine. You also want to fit a new aluminum washer onto the base of your drain plug. Now go ahead and put this in. The torque value on this is 40 foot-pounds. Got my torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds. There we go, 40 foot-pounds. All right, we just clean up under here and go ahead and reassemble everything. It's just the reverse. Under the car, first step is to remove this big plastic cover. Now the car ships with 2 covers actually. There's one underneath the engine as well. I've removed mine months and months and months ago because I kind of read that they have a tendency to get a little too hot and it kind of cooks and bakes the engine a bit. So it's not really super necessary, so I went ahead and took it off a while ago. If you need to take it off, you want to take that one off as well. But these are just quarter turn fasteners, and they'll just turn and sort of come loose. And there's clips in the front. There it goes. Okay, All right. With that plate out of the way, we've got great access here. Our oil filter is directly above this red tube here. So the reason we're removing the one on the left side is because, I don't know if you can see, but the oil plug is super duper close. It's right here. So if we try to take that off, oil's gonna go everywhere. Just easier to take this guy off. We'll use our little plastic diverter and we won't have a big old oil mess. Now that we have the connections off for the heaters here and we have our little R tube off on the left hand side, we're going to go ahead and drain the engine oil, which is this plug right here. There we go. We've got our little diverter guy here we're going to use. There we go. All right, we'll let that continue to drain a little bit. Well, that's just about done draining. We're going to go ahead and prep our drain plug. Now, the drain plug has a magnetic core in it, so you want to take a look at that and see what you see in there. Hopefully you don't see any types of chunks or anything. But there might be just the slightest bit of sort of brown sludge on it. Just go ahead and clean it. It's sort of a first indication if something has gone wrong. With our drain plug all nice and clean, we're just going to refit a new aluminum crush washer to it and go ahead and put it back on the car. It goes up also at 40 foot-pounds. We're going to use the same setup we used to get it off to torque it back on. Got my torque wrench here and my little universal joint. There we go. There we go, 40 foot-pounds. Now that our drain plug is back up and torqued to spec, our next job is going to be to get this oil filter out. Now it's kind of a bear to get it out. I'm going to have to remove an oil line up here and kind of get it out of the way so we can get up to it. It sort of sits up in a recess and it's really hard to get anything on it at all. The bolt on the oil tube that we need to take off is a 15 millimeter. You don't need to worry about it right away. It's not going to leak any oil until we pull the actual tube out. This is just a fastener to hold the tube in. So go ahead and pull that bolt out. Now you'll need a big screwdriver to get it out, but when it does come out, it's going to leak oil. So we want to put a towel up here to catch this oil as it comes out. So now what we do is we just work this guy off and work it out. It'll slide out. There we go. Yep, decent amount of oil coming out of there. Now with that oil tube out of the way, we can actually get our wrench up in there. This is always tricky because you need to get the wrench up there, but then it's going to leak oil. So here we go. Fit the wrench to the bottom. Run your extender up. There we go. Good. Go ahead and pull this guy off. It's a pretty huge amount of fuss there just to get this guy off. There's our oil coming out. We knew that was going to happen, right? This is the dirtiest oil change. Most oily oil change. There we go. Now it's loose. Alright. It will come through this other, towards the front of the car is the way to do it, and then underneath the shaft. So we've got our new oil filter here. We're going to use a little bit of our silicone grease as always on the rubber bit here. That will make it a lot easier to get it out next time. It's awfully hard to get a grip on it, but there we go. Okay, great. All right, oil filter is back in. Next is going to be to put that oil tube back in. Now, Porsche does recommend that you replace the O-ring on the end of it. I don't have an O-ring, and I'll do that if it starts to leak, but I think it'll probably be fine. Here it goes. Just wiggle it back and forth a little bit. You want to continue to wiggle it as you run it in. Now all that's left is to go ahead and reassemble everything under here, and we'll be done under the car. Looks like the filler neck on my car was missing, so this thing actually might be kind of cool. So the end of it, this had broken, I guess, in the past, and this piece was down at the base, and I went ahead and fished it out. But it just fits in here like this, so that when you put the oil cap on, it collapses down, which is kind of neat. And then when you need to put oil in, you've got this nice little extender here. So we're going to put in about 10 quarts and see if we can get 10 quarts in without it backing up. All right, that's 8 quarts right there. So at this point, I think I'm going to start the car and let it run for a little bit, get the oil kind of moving out. That'll give us a little more room in the reservoir. Now that we've got the first bit of oil in the car, the next thing we want to do is, this is just as an added measure of safety, is to pull the DME relay on the car so we can crank it over without it actually running. That'll bring the oil pressure up and fill up the oil filters and stuff, and that way you're not putting any real load on the engine as the new oil is flowing through the engine. So pretty easy to do. Your fuse box is in the upper right here of the car. So what you want to do is pull these little snaps off here and pull your cover back. There's 2 clips here on each side. Go and pop those off and pull your cover off. And set that aside. All right, now the relay you're looking for is down here in the bottom left corner, and it says right on it right here, DME. So that's the relay you're looking for. Just go ahead and pull this out. And with that out, the car is guaranteed not to run. So let's go ahead and crank the engine over a bit, get the oil pressure up. Then we're going to come back, put the relay back in, and then go ahead and start the car for reals. We've taken the car out and warmed it up, so it's at operating temperature right now. That's the only way you can check the oil, and you want to check the oil while the car is actually running, believe it or not. So you take the car out, get it nice and warm, bring it back, and have it sitting in a nice flat spot. And now we can pull the dipstick, which is up here. And it's super duper long because it has to go all the way back into the tank. So just wipe it off. Now there's a twisted bit on this from here to here, and so we're looking for the oil to be in this range. We're going to lay it down on top of our rag here, see if we can get a good reading. And there it is. It's about, I would say, maybe 2/3 of the way up from the bottom, which is about where I would like to see it. Now's a great time to go ahead and look at the oil indicator level in the car itself. A lot of people feel it's unreliable, but it's nice that you know exactly what it is back here at the dipstick, and then you can go look up there. It'll give you some idea of the correlation between the two. So let's go take a look at that. Our oil indicator is right over here. And if you're sitting, you have to let the car sit, and it has to be sitting on a flat surface, and the car has to be warm. We can see by the temperature gauge that we are good and warm. That's great. And it looks like we're right about at the half mark. That's where I love to see that gauge. Any more, any higher than that, and it's kind of overfilled. really that's pretty much the best spot for it. So after about 10.5 quarts of oil, that's exactly where we need to be. Well, our oil levels are right where I'd like them to be, and I've checked underneath and we don't have any leaks, so we're all done. So there's another YouTuber out there, a channel called 911%, and Jakob does a beautiful job on a C4S oil change, and he has a lot of really great 993 content. So I'm going to leave a link down below and in the description. So totally check out his channel. You'll just absolutely love it if you haven't seen it. It's great. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. If you got any questions or comments for me, leave them down below and I'll get right to them. If you would, it'd be awesome if you could share the video across different platforms and stuff. And you can always follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and such. So thank you so much for watching. And until next time, safe travels. Bye.